They thought they could slip through May 25th, 2025, somewhere in the Caribbean Sea. Calm waters, bright sun. Nothing out of the ordinary, at least on the surface. But 500 FT above the water, a Navy P-8 Poseidon patrol plane picked up something weird. A slow-moving vessel. No name, no flag, no AIS beacon. Just a metal speck creeping across Smuggler's corridor, known to law enforcement as the funnel down below, the guided missile destroyer. USS Gravely was already on alert. She wasn't there by accident. The Gravely had been deployed from Norfolk, Virginia, under U.S. Northern Command's Maritime Homeland Defense Authority. Her mission was to intercept threats before they ever touched the U.S. coastline. Drugs number 1 on that list on board the destroyer, the Coast Guard Law Enforcement Detachment, or LEDET 401. They've been riding shotgun ever since March. Think of them as the Navy's onboard bounty hunters, experts in maritime interdiction boarding procedures and taking down floating crime scenes at 0600 hours. Gravely's radar confirmed visual contact with the target. The ship didn't respond to. Hails no flag, no license, suspicious as hell. The order was given: intercept and investigate. Sailors scrambled boots, hit steel. The RHIB's rigid hull, inflatable boats were lowered into the sea like war hammers, fast, precise, and silent. The LEDET team loaded up with M4 carbines, boarding tools, and body cams as the RHIBs raced towards the suspect vehicle. The Gravely's bridge crew monitored everything: tracking speed, wave conditions, distance. One wrong move, and this could turn hostile, but the smuggler boat didn't run. That was the strange part. It just sat there bobbing like an empty shell. Maybe the crew thought they could talk their way out of it, or maybe they didn't realize who was coming. But when a U.S. Navy destroyer locks eyes on you, you're already done from a distance. It looked like a fishing boat. But the U.S. Navy doesn't rely on appearances, they rely on patterns. And this one didn't fit. The Caribbean Sea is a hotspot for narco-trafficking, especially through an area sailors call the funnel. It's a maritime choke point where drug routes from South America narrow on their way. North cartels love using small, fast boats disguised as local traffic, but trained eyes know the difference, and that's where the LEDET team comes in. LEDET stands for Law Enforcement Detachment, a Coast Guard unit deployed on Navy ships specifically to sniff out smuggling operations. They know every trick in the book: false hulls, hidden compartments, even fake engine failures to buy time. And these aren't just coasties. These guys are maritime hunters. This particular vessel, well, it raised red flags immediately with no state flag, no response, and no documentation. And the hull looking a bit beat up, but not worn down by actual use. It made it look more like someone had tried to make it look legit. And the route, well, it didn't match any fishing pattern. Not even close. The Gravely's bridge lit up. "We've got a runner," someone said. Not because it was moving fast, but because it matched every profile of a smuggling boat. But instead of it peeling off, it did something nobody expected. It stopped. It just dropped anchor and waited. That's when the tension really kicked in, because smugglers don't surrender, not unless they've got something to hide and no way to outrun it. Whatever was on that boat wasn't good, and the Navy was about to find out exactly how bad it was. The RHIBs approached fast, 2 sleek boats slicing through the water like scalpels on the surface. The USS Gravely loomed silently, watching everything on board. Radios crackled as LEDET 401 gave final instructions. The weapons were ready. The body cams were rolling, and every man was locked in. By the time they reached the suspect vessel, there was no sign of panic, just 3 men standing, stiff on the deck, trying not to look nervous. That was a red flag all by itself. Real fishermen don't freeze when a boarding party shows up. These guys looked like they'd rehearsed this moment and still weren't ready for it. Us Coast Guard prepare to be boarded. No resistance, no sudden move, just blank stares and muttered Spanish. The LEDET team climbed aboard, rifles lowered but not relaxed. The Navy's VBSS doctrine, visit board, search and seizure kicked in like muscle memory. The first thing they noticed, the cargo hold was sealed with a layer of plastic wrap and duct tape, standard cartel packaging beneath a canvas tarp. 19 square bundles, water-resistant triple wrapped in burlap tape, and heavy plastic bales, drug bales. They poked one open inside off-white bricks, stamped with strange logos. Some cartels use crowns, others use scorpions or jaguars. This one had a green S symbol burned into the surface cocaine, and lots of it later. Back on the Gravely, the
official weight would come in $860 lbs with a street value of $13.65 million. The suspects didn't say a word. They didn't have to. The drug said everything, let it called it in. The evidence was bagged, tagged, photographed and logged with chain of custody. The suspects were cuffed and secured for transport, and the boat was impounded, and the U.S. Navy was already preparing its report on the bridge of the Gravely. The mood was calm, not celebratory, but professional. This wasn't a lucky break. It was the result of intel planning and old-fashioned boots-on-deck execution. But down in the berthing compartments, there was quiet satisfaction. Another drug shipment stopped cold, another crew caught red-handed, and somewhere out there, a cartel boss just realized the U.S. Navy's watching back on the Gravely's deck. The evidence was laid out in the sun. 19 bales stacked like bricks at a construction site. Only this wasn't drywall, it was cocaine, raw, uncut, and wrapped tight enough to survive weeks at sea. Each bale weighed roughly 45 lb. No wonder the crew didn't run. They were either under orders, not to cartels, don't like blown shipments, or they figured surrender would buy them better treatment. Either way, the moment the first bale came up from the hold, the mood on deck shifted. This wasn't just a bust, it was a statement. Every bundle was tagged and logged by LEDET protocol. Each suspect, 3 men altogether, mid-30s, all claiming to be just fishing, were photographed and processed under maritime law. No weapons were found on board, but that didn't matter. The contraband alone was enough to trigger felony charges under U.S. federal drug trafficking laws. And here's the thing, it wasn't unusual. In fact, this type of operation is part of a broader strategy, one that targets high-value shipments before they ever reach U.S. shores. The Navy and Coast Guard call it forward interdiction. Stop the drugs at sea, and you prevent the violence.
addiction and corruption that follows on land, and with bales this clean, no moisture damage, no breaks in the seal. It was clear that this wasn't some amateur run. These were pro-level smugglers moving product for a network that expected results. They didn't get them. Instead, they got boarded by a US destroyer and a team of federal agents with clipboards, rifles, and zero patience for narco excuses and for the Gravely's crew. Well, this was just Tuesday. Once the drugs were secured and the suspects were detained, the real work began first. Stop the chain of custody. Every single bundle had to be documented, weight markings, condition, right down to the gram. Now this isn't Hollywood evidence, like this has to hold up in court, and one bad label or picture can blow the whole case. Meanwhile, the suspects, now zip-tied, photographed and seated under armed watch, were transferred to holding quarters aboard the Gravely. No interrogation. That's not the Navy's job. Their responsibility is detention and transport, not prosecution from there. The next phase kicks in handover, in coordination with US authorities ashore. The Navy arranged for the suspects and contraband to be transferred to the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, or a regional Coast Guard cutter with legal authority in territorial waters. In most cases, they're brought to a U.S. territory, like Puerto Rico, where federal charges are filed. As for the ship itself, well, it was seized, and depending on jurisdiction, it may be destroyed or used as evidence. The process is tight procedural and, most importantly, bulletproof. Every move is documented, every step is logged. This is how the U.S. Navy and the Coast Guard avoid legal loopholes and make sure that traffickers don't walk away on technicalities. And that's the part that most people never see. They see the bust, they see the bales in the headlines, but what turns a sea interception into a courtroom conviction is discipline. And Gravely's crew had plenty of it. The takedown might have lasted minutes, but the aftermath, well, that's the part that hits the cartels where it really hurts. This wasn't some random bust. It was part of a larger long-gunning operation called Campaign Martillo, Spanish for hammer. And that name fits, launched in 2012. Campaign Martillo is a multinational effort aimed at crushing drug trafficking routes across the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. The U.S. leads the charge with Navy destroyers, Coast Guard cutters, and allied navies from over a dozen countries working together to intercept narcotics before they ever hit American soil. The strategy: hit them hard and hit them early. Smugglers often assume that once they're out of South American waters, they've got smooth sailing campaign. Martillo exists to prove them wrong by patrolling known trafficking corridors, using aircraft drones and maritime patrols. The US and its partners stay one step ahead, and that's where ships like the USS Gravely come in. Destroyers aren't just built for war. They're mobile radar stations, intelligence hubs, and law enforcement platforms. When paired with Coast Guard teams, they become floating interdiction units capable of stopping and boarding vessels thousands of miles from U.S. borders. The mission is clear: disrupt the networks, not just the couriers. Every ship seized, every ton of cocaine pulled from circulation is one less payload funding cartels, warlords, or terror groups. And with each successful bust, Martillo sends a message loud and clear: you can run your boats, you can change your routes, but we're still coming. Stopping a drug boat in the middle of the ocean isn't luck, it's precision coordination and technology on the surface. You've got the USS Gravely, an Arleigh-Burke-class guided missile destroyer. Sure, she's designed to shoot down missiles and hunt subs, but in operations like this, she turns into something else: a surveillance and interdiction machine. Gravely's radar systems scan hundreds of miles of ocean. Everything from small craft to fast movers gets tracked and profiled. Add in real-time data from aircraft like the P-8 Poseidon, a long-range maritime patrol plane with advanced radar and infrared sensors, and you're looking at full-spectrum awareness. But none of that matters without people. The Coast Guard led a team aboard. Gravely is the human edge they're trained in, boarding hostile vessels, searching tight quarters, and identifying struggling tactics that radar never could. And their fast from detention to boarding can happen in under 30 minutes. Every move is backed by encrypted comms, live satellite feeds, and a command chain that doesn't hesitate. Need visual confirmation from 50,000 FT call, the MQ-4C Triton drone. Need infrared scans of a cargo hold. Poseidon's got it. Need a legal boarding order in international waters that's built into the mission plan. It's not just a ship chasing a suspect, it's a floating command center coordinating with intel analysts, aircraft crews, and federal agencies. Cartels rely on speed and confusion. The U.S. Navy relies on systems training and zero guesswork. And in that game, the Navy doesn't miss 860 LLBs of cocaine. Sounds like a headline. And it was. But the real impact of that seizure ripples far beyond the busted boat. This shipment wasn't just $1365 million. That money would have paid for weapons, bribes, extortion, and turf wars across multiple countries. Every bale pulled from that hole was one less transaction feeding organized crime and instability. And this wasn't a lucky catch. It was a hit against an entire distribution chain. Drug trafficking is a network game. You take out one shipment and you throw off the timeline for buyers, dealers, transporters, and corrupt officials who expected their cut. The cartel behind this low didn't just lose profit, they lost trust, and that matters. And on the American side, one less ton of cocaine. Reaching US shores means fewer overdoses, fewer turf wars in cities, and fewer addicts trapped in a cycle that started thousands of miles away. So, yeah, to some people, this was just a drug bust. But to the Gravely's crew and to the LEDET team that made it happen, it was a direct hit. Now imagine this. You're standing watch on a Navy destroyer in the middle of the Caribbean radar, picks up a ghost ship. No flag, no ID, headed straight through a known smuggling route. You've got minutes to react. Do you call it in? Do you launch the boarding team? Or do you think it's just another fishing boat? Let us know in the comments, what would you do if your ship intercepted a vessel carrying $13 million in cocaine? Would you keep your cool, or would you brace for trouble? One ship, 19 bales, $13.7 million, stopped cold in open water. The USS Gravely and LEDET 401 didn't just board a boat, they shut down a cartel's payday, and that's the